My name is Timbani Threadgill, and this is Timbo Talk. I'd like to thank you once again for joining me for another episode of the podcast. Appreciate everybody who has shared, liked, subscribed, all that good stuff. Please keep that up. It is appreciated. So, it's been a rough week, y'all. No way to sugarcoat it. It's just been one of those weeks where it's just sucked. There's been some challenges professionally. I've had some really difficult work situations that have emerged. It's been a tough week personally. And it's one of those things where even though I know the tide will turn, it's just been a very frustrating and discouraging week or so. So I just wanted to talk about that on today's episode of the pod and just kind of be transparent about where I'm at and what I have going on. I'm generally a person who is, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this in other episodes, I'm almost annoyingly optimistic. I generally stay encouraged. I generally hang on to the hope that things will get better. The trial, the challenge, the difficulty is just temporary. And that remains the same. It's not like in this moment I no longer believe those things, but it's just, sometimes it is just difficult. So again, I just wanted to be kind of transparent and honest in this intro. And just let you guys kind of know where I'm at. I'm just kind of speaking from the heart about what's happening this week in my life. And I, as I shared, consider myself a helper, still a therapist, and still have to support my patients and be there for my patients and be present for my patients. But I got my own shit going on sometimes too. And this has been one of those weeks where that has been very evident. So that's where I'm at. This episode is called Timbo is Frustrated and Timbo is Discouraged. So I'm not going to get too far into the weeds, but there's been some challenges with my work and some variables that I've had to deal with kind of abruptly, which is okay. That happens sometimes. That's how it is. But that kind of set the tone for how things started. I also had a couple things happen personally, just with some personal relationships that just hasn't been great. Just hasn't been great, being honest about it. I try to give people their space to be where they're at and try to be graceful with people and understanding of their circumstances, just as I would hope that they would be with me. But there's times when, I don't know, things just don't jive. I'm a very sensitive person in general, which I've shared before. And when things are not going well or you're having some difficulties, some of those things can kind of get compounded. So that also contributes to where I'm at. And I think the overall I don't know if stress is the right word. It's part of it, but I think the overall disruption to my norms across many different planes of my life led to just really feeling overwhelmed. And that's something that I find whenever we're dealing with a challenge or a difficulty is that things can become very overwhelming. Anything that disrupts our peace kind of spills into our everyday life. So now things that would have otherwise been normal, your daily routine, cooking, going to the grocery store, doing the laundry. For me this week, getting your child ready for her first day of school, right? Those things that can, be normal and simple become tiresome, become grueling, become these things that we almost dread. My kiddo went back to school this week and there was a couple of different things that we had to get taken care of. And just thinking about the list, and it wasn't anything crazy, but just thinking about the list in the midst of just not a great week and a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. The first, I would say Monday and just the start of the week in general was really rough. So I was told on Monday I would be transitioning out of a building where I've been seeing patients for almost a year and a half, which is really abrupt. And so I had a lot of anxiety and just really shitty feelings about going in to see those patients the next day, which would have been Tuesday, and kind of sharing with them, hey, this will be our last session. There's going to be another therapist that's going to be taking over this building, et cetera, so forth. And I'll kind of stop that at that. The point I'm trying to make is that that just made for a really, really challenging couple of days. I really care about my patients, and you get invested in their progress. You get invested in their lives and their challenges and the things that they're kind of working towards. And I think that one of the more challenging aspects was not feeling like I had enough time to do that adequately or to do that the way I would like to have done it. But for whatever reason, I didn't have the opportunity to do that. So it was very abrupt. It didn't feel fair to my patients. It didn't feel fair to me, but just one of those things that kind of happens sometimes. So yeah, just thinking about the things that we had to take care of before my kiddo went back to school was challenging. It felt monumental to go and get her a new book bag and notepads and pencils and make sure we had this and did this and that. Like it just felt like this terribly difficult task, along with grocery shopping, getting laundry done, and just normal things that we have to do. We also traveled last week, so I felt like there was a lot of things to do around the house. Doing laundry and unpacking and getting ready for the work week, and all that was kind of smashed into this very, brief period of time. And then I'm dealing with the work shit. And then I'm dealing with the personal relationships with people. And then I'm dealing with the challenges, just life, because I'm a human being, right? But yeah. So the weight of disruption is a real thing, and it can feel very, very challenging. For a lot of us, when a big stressor hits, it drains our capacity, right? So I kind of talked all about that just now, but I just kind of wanted to bring that to the forefront and to the surface and just acknowledge it because it's a real thing. And this disruption of my routine and my calm and my peace, et cetera, so forth, all in all is not the biggest thing to deal with. There are much more, challenging disruptions to our routines, health challenges, financial challenges, losing our jobs abruptly. There are all kinds of things that can happen that can kind of be more difficult to deal with. And it's all relative because what might be really challenging to one person may not be to another. But the disruptions of, especially for me, the routine can be very disruptive. And then when other little things come along after that, other little disruptions, other little things that you're not expecting to deal with, a fight with your significant other, or feeling let down by a friend, or feeling a lack of support from your support system, or whatever it is, can feel even more daunting and challenging to kind of deal with. These things kind of compound, right? So whatever your difficulty is, your crisis is, the stresses of life, you're still underpaid and overworked, your relationship is still on the rocks, your kid is still having challenges in school, whatever it is, those things that you normally juggle become heavier and more tiresome, and it can potentially lead to some spiraling. So it's something to be aware of. When you're aware of it, you can try and kind of pull yourself out of it, or at least being aware of it allows us to work on it or address it. So that's where I'm at. I am extremely frustrated, and I'm also pretty discouraged. There are things that are out of my control. Many things are out of my control, and there are some things that I can control. And I think one of the most frustrating aspects of some of the work that I do, not all of it, I've been very blessed that I have a lot of autonomy in some areas of my work, but there are other areas of my work where I don't have autonomy, and it's challenging. I'm not a control freak. I don't like to control everything, but there are certain aspects of my work that I would like to have full autonomy over. It's been a challenge for a long time. And, when you keep running into barriers that really kind of expose the fact that, hey, you don't have autonomy over this, you don't have control over what this looks like, that gets discouraging. I try to do really good work with my patients. I generally have a very good reputation with colleagues, with patients. People say good things about me. People ask if I can see patients in other places, if I have more capacity for patients. And I don't say that to brag or to boast. I say that with the utmost humility and appreciation. And I've worked hard for that. My motto is, do good work, put your patients first, take care of your patients, and everything else will, work out if you do that. And that's really what I've always tried to do. And I've been very blessed as a result of that. But when you encounter barriers and when you encounter challenges and they are not related to your work, when the narrative that you hear is your work is great, you do great work with patients, everyone loves you, everyone's so pleased with the services you provide, but you still kind of encounter these backstage barriers, it can be discouraging. And there have definitely been times where I've really considered, okay, is this time for a career reset? And that's not to say I'm not doing therapy anymore, but maybe doing therapy in a different setting. I had some conversations with a couple of different friends about that. Maybe getting back to working with children or getting into some more emergency psych type of work. Just chewing on things and kind of looking at everything. It's a fluid thing, but yeah, it's kind of been a lot. So I'm really just trying to be transparent and just I guess kind of be real with myself, and talking through some of this on this episode is giving me an opportunity to kind of chew on some more of my thoughts and to be real with myself about where I'm at. This episode is almost kind of like a journal entry, writing about some of my frustrations and discouragements in this moment. So yeah, and listen, if you were struggling with something, or you've had a rough week, or you're discouraged, man, I hope that you chew on it as well. I've had a lot of time this week to just chew on things and kind of process my thoughts and make peace with some things, and let some things kind of settle and acknowledge those things. And that's kind of a good segue to what I'm going to talk about from there, which is, well, what do I do now since I'm discouraged and since I'm frustrated? For me, I kind of preach this a lot, but I think that the first thing that I kind of find myself needing to do is just let my thoughts and feelings settle, being okay with where I'm at. I used the example earlier of my kiddos back to school list feeling overwhelming and feeling daunting. And initially, my reaction to having those feelings is doubling down on feeling shitty and getting down on myself even more, because now, on top of dealing with these work stressors and these relationship challenges and the stresses of life, now I'm also feeling like I'm failing as a parent because I'm not being present for my child, because I'm not taking care of these things as expeditiously, right, as I need to. And that's not helpful. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I talked about spiraling, is now we are allowing these things to get even worse. And now we're dwelling in it. And now it's bleeding into other areas of our life. And that's just not healthy. So I allow myself to kind of sit with my feelings and kind of sit with where I'm at. If I need to process through some thoughts, if I need to shed some tears or beat myself up or be down on myself or be down about the situation or sit in my hurt feelings, I generally will give myself a night, a day or a night to do that. Again, the annoyingly optimistic person inside of me kind of creeps out. And the next day, it immediately goes to, okay, well, where do we go from here? What can we take away from this, and how do we address this? Can we take that negative energy and that yuck and that sick feeling in our stomach and turn that into action, right? So if you lose your job, instead of festering in, shit, I've lost my job, what am I going to do? Can we turn that into, let's go and look at every, jobbing, Indeed, Facebook Market, or Craigslist, or any other job listing site, monster.com, and look for jobs and apply for jobs, or wake up and update my resume, or whatever it is, and kind of turn that inaction and that unknown of what do I do now into action. Maybe you are dealing with relationship issues. Maybe you break up with your significant other. What are some positive things that we can do with that energy? Can we at least commit to exercising and using some of that negative energy and that frustration and sadness and heartbreak or whatever it is to try and be healthy? Can we at least go for a walk, right? And that's also part of what I tend to do when I find myself in a bad space as well, is these big, not even these big, like I talked about, these normal ass tasks like doing laundry and grocery shopping and cooking your dinner. Those things can feel very tiresome and difficult. So for me, I might say on that day where I'm trying to turn that negative energy into something more positive, I'll get up and say, okay, let's think about our plan. Let's think about how we're going to get out of this hole or this jam. We're feeling like we're backed against a wall. What's one thing that we can do right now? So if I'm looking for a new job, maybe I'll say, okay, so today I will commit to making sure that my resume is updated. I'll make that be the task for today. Another task I might commit myself to doing is today I'll make sure that I grocery shop. All right. So now day 2, I might say, okay, my task for today is I'm going to commit to applying to, at least 5 jobs. If I've lost my job, that's the scenario that we're kind of using. If I've lost my job, I'm going to commit to applying to, 5 jobs today. And since I went grocery shopping yesterday, I'm going to commit to doing a little bit of meal prep, to making sure at least dinner for me and the kiddo are not things that I have to worry about or stress about over the next couple of days or whatever it is. I also hang on to my hope. Once I feel down, then acknowledge that I feel down and let feelings settle. And like I said, sit in my hurt feelings or feel frustrated or feel mad or whatever it is. I become hopeful. I become optimistic. I've shared this before in other episodes as well. I try to make peace with the worst case scenario. And once I kind of make peace with that worst case scenario, I think to myself, okay, so what will I do if this worst case scenario comes to fruition? How do I rebuild? How do I relaunch? How do I get things going from there? And when I'm able to do that, I'm able to kind of come up with a worst case scenario plan. So then I'll execute a not so worst case scenario plan and look at how we can figure things out from there and go on from there. So I generally hang on to my optimism and my hope. I also think that persistence is important, and it's something that we have to acknowledge. People who tend to see the glass half full, people who have that it's going to work out mentality, people who are able to bounce back, who have persevered through things are generally going to be more successful in taking some of those smaller steps to get back on track. And I've generally been somebody who tends to do that, who tends to remain pretty optimistic, who has shown some resiliency and had some persistence over my life. So, hey, it works out pretty good. A couple of practical things that we can do, like I mentioned earlier, is break things down into just micro steps, small things, one thing a day for a while. It's also important to give yourself permission to rest without guilt. I took a day this day and I slept in. I didn't go to the gym. I was like, I'm emotionally exhausted. I just need to rest. And that's what I needed to do. Gave myself permission to do that. We talked about setting one small step. We can call those small daily wins, right? Go to the grocery store, update the resume, whatever it is. You can also ask for help. And this is an important one. This is something that really kind of helped turn the week around for me. Is I reached out to a lot of friends that I'm close to. I guess really my counsel, like the people who I am closest to. And I asked a lot of them to pray for me and just about everything, just for peace of mind, for clarity on the next steps, just for God's will in my life. And it was really uplifting for me. I had a lot of really, really great encouragement from friends. I had a friend who offered to fast with me. It was really cool. We fasted together about some of these situations, and I just felt really supported, and that really helped me to turn things around as well. So yeah, that's what my week has been like. I had a different idea as to what this pod would look like. I didn't even really want to record this pod today, but producer Rob was like, yo, what's up with Sunday's app? So I told him I was probably just going to talk about the week. And that's where I'm at, guys. This is the end of the week now. It's Friday, full transparency. And I'm feeling much more encouraged than I were on Monday or Tuesday. You know, Tuesday, like I said, was one of the worst days I've had in a minute. But I've let that go. It's in the past. Everything that happened on that day is behind me. Unless Doc Brown pulls up in the DeLorean, Marty, I can't go back in time and change anything. So it is what it is. You know, I have peace about it and I've moved on. I have some things that I am working on that I've been praying about, and some doors that seem to be opening that will hopefully lead to some long-term solutions and some long-term peace around different things that have been stressful. And I think that I have also just accepted some things in my life, specific to some friendships and relationships, and also specific to my expectations of others. I'll spend some time at some point talking about expectations and how they can do us in, but I'll just briefly say, man, when people show you who they are, you got to believe them. We can't continually expect more from people, especially when those people have not shown you that they don't have the capacity to give you more. That can be setting ourselves up for failure. I'm not saying you have to get rid of that person or cut them off, but just taper your expectations at time, and it can really make it easier to navigate some of those challenges. So that's also something that's been helpful moving forward with some of the challenges of this week. Listen, as a good friend of mine used to say, yo, son, tough times don't last. Tough people do. So stay tough. But no, honestly, remain encouraged, okay? Comparison is the thief of joy. I absolutely believe that. But at the same time, we have to remind ourselves that things could be a whole lot worse. And if we compare ourselves to individuals that we know who are dealing with much more difficult trials or circumstances, it's really, really a lot easier to look at our circumstances and say, okay, how do I make the most of this, right? How do I move forward from this? Frustration and discouragement are part of our journeys as human beings. No one here that has ever found success, that has ever been to the top of the mountain, has ever done it without dealing with challenges and frustrations and moments and glimmers in which they were discouraged. That's how it goes sometimes. It's part of the human experience, but they do not have to define our story. If you're feeling frustrated and discouraged, you're not alone. So keep your faith, remain optimistic, and just know you got to hold on to hope, take the next small step, and know that the tide will turn eventually. Just stick with it. I appreciate you guys as always. I look forward to jumping back onto some of the topics that we've been kind of floating around in next week's episode. Please continue to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. My name is Timbani Threadgill. This is Timbo Talk.